That's the cool thing about jiu-jitsu, man. It's like, you could be a $160 dripping wet, but you could, destroy a dude if, you know what I mean? If you shake his back. I remember we were doing this combatives thing up in Copenhagen. One of the guys, Dave Camarillo, he's actually super awesome dude. He's all over Instagram. He's like training Zuckerberg and John Wick for the last movie. Cool, super cool guy. He was kind of the lead instructor. And he's like, I think he just got his 5th degree black belt. If that's even, I think I don't know how many there are. He just got another stripe, and I think it's the highest you can get, whatever that is. And I paired up with Dave, and I'm thinking like, all right. And I thought I had him dead to rights. I hit him with like a blast double, like sternum on his chest. I sucked his legs in. I'm like, oh, I got the black belt. And of course, he was letting me do it, right? Because as we were going to the ground, before we had even hit the ground, by the time we landed, he had me in some crazy leg lock, tapped me out in literally like a second and a half.
You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. Really excited to be with you. We're going to switch things up today. We're going to do a shotgun round Q&A that you guys submitted on Instagram. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We are not going to be able to cover all of them. There was a lot, but we are going to kind of folder some, and maybe we'll do this again depending on the success of this episode. So thank you for the inputs. A few housekeeping items before we kick it off. Some good news. We are now officially in the top 1% of all podcasts, which is really freaking cool. We've only been doing this a few weeks, and this was a big leap for us. However, due to some words that have been mentioned in our podcasts, we have been blacklisted from the charts. So that is a whole new thing we're learning about right now. I'm not really worried about it, but if you are liking what you're watching, please help us share our content, subscribe, review, send it to your buddies. That will hopefully allow us to defeat some ridiculous censorship over things that are very, kind of common sense things. So thank you for everyone tuning in. It's been really awesome. We've been getting a lot of awesome comments, and continue to give us feedback on what you want to hear. We're hoping to add some value to your lives and hopefully some key takeaways that can make your lives better. One quick plug that I'm excited about, and then we'll get right into it. By the time this airs, our Campfire collection will have just launched. This is, I think, my favorite collection of the year. If you didn't shop last year, it was a huge success. The weather's changing. People are barbecuing outside. Football's on. The leaves are rustling tone. So this is the best one of the year, I think. We got jeans, flannels, flannel jackets. The girls wanted me to shout out a few things. We are having mid-rise jeans added, Tony. So apparently that's a big thing. The jeans crushed last year. That was a little bit of a leap for us as well. It's our stretchy fabric, but the women, they nailed the fit. The guys' jeans are awesome too, especially if you got big legs and a big butt like me. And they also wanted me to shout out the fleece-lined leggings, which are coming, which verbatim, the girls 4 minutes ago said they are absolutely insane. So whatever that means, get excited about it. But that will have just dropped, so if you want to head to the site, I know there'll be some good stuff for this time of year, and so glad football's back. So without further ado, Tony, you got the show, man. I'm going to try to react to these, and let's do this.
Cool. Well, first off, thank you everyone for submitting your questions. You gave the HQ some good laughs with a couple of them that rolled in, some of which will make the episode, some of which won't, but I loved seeing the screenshots of those start to roll in. So keep them coming. Always feel free to, if you have a subject or a topic you want us to discuss, please throw those on our Instagram. We're more than happy to cover those. So Bear, the one I want to kick off with is...
Damn, I'm kind of nervous. I'm in the hot seat.
Hey,
man.
That's actually one of the questions on... Hey, let's kick off with it. You know what? One of the questions was, were you guys nervous for the first couple episodes? So not only the first couple, it seems like, but yeah, I still get it, especially if you have caffeine, that gives you some little butterflies.
We got to stop doing these in the morning, man. We're doing these right after my workout. I roll in and it's like, we got to roll and I'm all caffeinated. So maybe we'll do it afternoon and record it. But no, I wasn't nervous. I think honestly the hardest part is the intro, which fortunately we've never had to edit and we just roll right into it. But right before we kind of go live, I don't know why you don't want to screw it up. But no, these are regular topics, man. Just normal dudes talking about normal, hopefully relatable stuff. I think the interviews are a lot more difficult, particularly when they're remote, just kind of playing off of body language and where to take the conversation. But I think hopefully we'll get better at that. But we've already had a couple of really cool ones. That Riley Gaines one we just did that will have already aired was absolutely epic, and she's incredible. But no, I mean, we're trying not to take this too seriously, and hopefully there's some authenticity in that for the people that are listening.
Yeah, I have to counter a little bit that the first episode, I had a couple people tell me, dude, your voice literally sounded different from the first episode to the second. And I went back and listened, and it's definitely, there's a little shakiness to mine in the first. So I was a little camera shy on that first one, but definitely feeling myself getting a little more and more comfortable. All right, so let's kick it off with one I really liked that rolled in. I think it's very relatable, and I think we all kind of have our own different system or our own ideal for what this would look like. But the question was, what does an ideal day look like for you?
Damn. Oh, so personal question. Yeah. Shit. All right. All right. Here's kind of a normal day, ideal day. I think if we're talking work week, kind of like a productive
Well, remember,
day.
This can be ideal. So
yeah,
if your day's ideal, then it would be what you're doing. But you can throw some things in there that maybe you don't get to do all the time that like would be your ideal day.
I'll do ideal, and then I'll do maybe what is maybe sometimes more likely, but I recognize that I should be trying to strive towards ideal. Wake up 06, coffee machine, make coffee, let the dog out, feed the dog, drink coffee on the deck as the sun's coming up, reset. I usually get out my legal pad and write down my top 3 for the day. And then I'll look at my planner on the phone to kind of see what my meetings are that day, just to kind of get in the right headspace and make sure I'm not overlooking something. And then usually that baby monitor will start going off. So start that with my daughter and get her going, feed her, get her dressed, get her out to daycare, drop her at daycare, go straight to the gym, hammer it at the gym for hopefully hour and 15, and then come to BP, rock and roll here till 5, rip over to daycare, grab her, right as they're closing usually, and then hang with her. She likes to go out to the beach a lot. We're fortunate to live on the beach, so we usually just run on the beach until 7-ish, put her down, and then I try to end with cold tub and hot tub contrast. I've been doing that for the last few weeks, and it's an absolute game changer. So I'll do rep scheme I've been doing is 4 minutes hot tub, 2 cold for 4 rounds. And then if I'm doing it at night, I'll end with hot because it'll like chill you out. Yep. And if I'm able to do it in the morning, like on the weekends, I'll flip that. And that's been a game changer. And I also have a sauna coming, so I'll start doing some sauna stuff too. So that is an ideal day. However, sometimes that morning routine, can be like, you're supposed to go out there, not look at your phone. What am I doing? I'm doing a few emails on my phone. Then I scroll Instagram, start, you know what I mean? Before you know it, it's like 6:45 and you haven't done any of those things you should have done. But I think I'm getting more disciplined at not falling for that kind of stuff. But that's an ideal day. And I do get meals delivered. So I get basically everything that I consume in a day is delivered from a meal service here in town. That's absolutely awesome, and gets your macros within a gram. So I try to keep that super dialed. You got to hydrate. So I drink an LMNT packet first thing with creatine and glutamine in there. And then crush a big breakfast. So I mean, those are like little things, but if you overlook it, like it's before you know it, it's lunchtime and you've had like coffee and like a pre-workout and you haven't like hydrated at all.
Yeah. Do you try to limit your caffeine intake at all? I know you said coffee in the morning. Do you do another then before the workout at around, I'm assuming it's around what, 8 or 9?
I'll do a giant iced coffee in this huge mason. It's like a 32-ounce mason jar, and just hammer that. And then I go right into pre-workout. So but it's like, it's 6:30 in the morning. So if you're going to do it first thing.
You do coffee and pre-workout?
Well, I drink the coffee first, and then, I switch from guns to missiles, man. You know what I mean?
No wonder your resting heart rate was 115.
Yeah. And now you guys understand why I'm like this right now. But no, then you roll into the workout and that peaks, and then you're ripping it. And then, I try not to consume any caffeine after noon.
Yes.
And then I'm good to go.
And as far as the sauna and, or I guess right now it's hot tub and cold tub, have you noticed a difference in your sleep? I know those are all the hype right now. I'm a big believer in sauna and cold tub or cold exposure. Have you noticed a distinct difference?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think for the cold tub, I've also noticed a huge improvement in like anxiety. There's some personal stuff I'm going through right now that I won't talk about, but it's heightened my levels of anxiety significantly. So that's actually why I got the cold tub, because I was like, I have to do something to mitigate this. So for those that deal with anxiety, that's one of the things that, I've heard really helps. And then by doing it, it 100% is true. It kind of chills you out. You almost get this euphoric feeling for 3-4 hours after. So yeah, it's been a game changer, man. You're definitely a little uncomfortable at first. You got to get used to it. Still not comfortable, getting into 45-degree water at 9 o'clock at night when it's dark out is not a natural thing to want to do. But when you're done, you never regret it. So,
yeah, those cold exposure is a difference maker, man, like you said. And I know people like Andrew Huberman can put more like actual data to it. And I think it's like some insane 230% increase in dopamine 30 minutes after you do the cold exposure. So yeah, if that's not something I understand there's some limits around having to buy ice or buying an expensive cold tub, but definitely worth doing. Even if you live by some source of water in the winter, dude, go hop in.
Yeah, and if you end on hot at night, dude, it's like the craziest, deepest sleep of all time.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And I have the chili pad that covers my mattress, so I crank that down to like 64 degrees, and I'm basically freezing the entire night, which I don't know is like what the design, but it you know what I mean? It keeps that temp down, and so I think I'm onto some good things, but the Huberman stuff's great because there's so much good stuff you can get from that to learn and kind of enhance what you're doing. So
for sure. Well, cool. The part of your ideal day segues into another question that was asked, and that is, what does your training look like right now? So I know training's a big part of your life. So give us what your training looks like right now. And are there any, I'm sure it's changed now that you're out of the military. Obviously you played college football. So are there any, along with your training, are there any benchmarks you're continually striving towards, or are you kind of showing up and throwing it up on the chalkboard when you get there?
Yeah, damn. I didn't realize people were going to submit personal questions. I'm just some schmuck, you know what I mean? But train 5 days a week, Monday through Wednesday. Rest days are Thursday, Sunday usually, but I'll try to do some mobility and definitely hot tub, cold tub those days for sure. For me, it's kind of a hybrid of the stuff I learned playing football in college and then CrossFit. I like that blend because with CrossFit, I feel like I'm more conditioned. And I feel like you should be able to sustain that. You know what I mean? No one gives a shit what your 1 rep bench press is. What's your 1 rep bench press after 5 minutes of grueling activity, right? I mean, if you're in some kind of scuffle, like, does that really matter? What's your 5 rep max back squat after 3 quarters? You know what I mean? So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I usually do traditional kind of strength stuff that, we learn in college, but then I'll do a conditioning Metcon at the end. And then I'll kind of blend those two together. But honestly, I shouldn't do this, but I totally wing it. I take everything I've learned over the years and just like, all right, so right now I'm doing 10, 8, 6, 4, 2 for my core lifts so bench,
yep.
And squat. And then, I'll do accessories with that. And then I'll get the lungs, I'll hammer the lungs at the very end because I think it's important to maintain conditioning. For me, even, obviously I'm out of the game and, but I still like to keep goals because I think that keeps you on track. So I just, my basic ones that I write on a little notepad every year. Right now, I want to be able to back squat 405, bench 350. I want to be able to power clean 300, 6-minute mile, and a 2K row under 645. For me, as long as I can maintain those, I'm good. Anything beyond that's a bonus.
As long as you can maintain those. Those are absurd. Those are absurd for the everyday person.
They're not absurd, but here's the thing. I don't want them to be. That's why you got to throw in the mile and the 2K row, because anyone could just be some strong meathead.
Yeah.
And and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're one of those guys that like never runs,
still fun.
You're good. It's fine, man. But just let's all acknowledge, if you ever get in an altercation, you're toast after 15 seconds.
Yeah,
if you're that giant meathead at the gym that has never gotten out of breath in like 20 years, but you think you're a big tough guy, like you might last 10 seconds, and then anything beyond that, you literally are toast.
That's why you need to spend time around wrestlers at some point in your life, because regardless of your size, you get with somebody that's been wrestling their whole life, they're going to make you look like a fool very quickly, no matter how strong you are.
Yeah,
so.
You see that cauliflower ear, man, just
stay away.
Stay away, dude. Yeah, stay away.
Yeah. Which of those, do you have any of those that are hard? You're a big dude, so is it easier for you to
6-minute mile
is tough. See, for me,
it's not, because I'm like 240, so that's, I'm big Clydesdale, just the mouth breathing in the back, man, trying to hold on for dear life. So yeah, that's those are the basics. And I think like, the why behind it, I think, this is just one man's opinion, but I think as men, we should at least have some capability of protecting other humans, right? Like I think it's this, particularly our family members and like even just innocent people. If some old lady was getting jumped at the gas pump, like as a dude, you should be able to go intervene and drop the hammer, right? And be able to sustain that. If particularly your family, what if someone's trying to carjack your car at the gas pump and your daughter's in a car seat in the back and there's 3 dudes trying to carjack you? What do you do in that situation? So for me, even though maybe it's a little bit paranoid, I see it through that lens of I'm doing this to maintain a capability that I'm now obligated to maintain.
I think it grounds you too. It's almost opposite of what you would think, is that in my experience, the most dangerous people are usually the most kind of grounded and calm, because they don't have that anxiety of like, if I needed to defend myself. It almost gives you a subtle confidence in your everyday life. Like, and that's both from a physically fit level and then also JiuJitsu, fighting, wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai. Like when you're good at those things, man, it kind of like, it gives you a looseness because you know that you could respond to a situation. So definitely agree that there needs to be a certain level of physical capability, whether that is just being fit enough to handle yourself in some type of physical altercation. And then also, if you want to go further with it, digging into some of the martial arts and different fighting tactics.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about jiu-jitsu, man. It's like, yeah, you could be a $160 dripping wet, but you could, destroy a dude if, you know what I mean? If you shake his back. I remember we were doing this combatives thing up in Copenhagen, and there was like 6 or 7 black belts that were the cadre, like teaching us, just like rolling around. And I told in one of the guys, Dave Camarillo, he's actually super awesome dude. He's all over Instagram. He's like training Zuckerberg and John Wick for the last movie. Super cool guy. He was kind of the lead instructor. And he's like, I think he just got his 5th degree black belt. If that's even, I think I don't know how many there are. He just got another stripe, and I think it's the highest you can get, whatever that is. And I basically we were doing 5-minute rounds with each guy for 10 rounds. And just every round ends, you get a new partner. You just go at it for like an hour straight. And I paired up with Dave, and I'm thinking like, all right. And I thought I had him dead to rights. I hit him with like a blast double, like sternum on his chest. I sucked his legs in. I'm like, oh, I got the black belt. And of course, he was letting me do it, right? Because as we were going to the ground, before we had even hit the ground, by the time we landed, he had me in some crazy leg lock, tapped me out in literally like a second and a half. Yeah. And that's when I realized, like, all right, when the guys know that, it's the ultimate equalizer, man. So, yeah. Maintain it to some degree and whatever makes you happy, but there's so many different ways you can do it. But for me, that's how I do it.
Cool. Well, those two were good to kick off with. Yeah. Let's actually, this one's personal as well, but how has your career impacted you as a parent?
Well, I think at the most basic level, financially it's helped. Well, I think that can be a very dangerous trap of thinking that finances cure things. It definitely can mitigate things and make certain things easier. So that's been one. That's one thing I don't have to worry about right now with my daughter, which is important to me. And I think the balance for anyone, going through that is, how do you raise them in a way where that actually doesn't become a disadvantage later in their life because they were too taken care of. You know what I mean? To me, that, she's very young right now, so I don't have to worry about that yet. But at some point, you know what I mean? We can't be eating from the silver spoon because she needs to learn to be scrappy. Like, that's how I was taught, you know what I mean? And, there's the saying, like, it's the cycle of, so I would say that was one thing. And I think, the drawback is, you and I have talked about this before, is like, you now have to balance things way differently, because you're not, it isn't about just growing the business and being this diehard entrepreneur anymore. There's other aspects you have to take into account, and I think that we hit that with the Chasing Success episode. And that can be a really vulnerable thing too, because we're competitive. We want to compete. We want to win. So, it's 8:00 at night and you want to be firing out those emails, and you know what I mean? You should be doing other things and just being present. And that is hard. It's a hard adjustment, particularly when you're as competitive as I am, because there's still work to be done. And to me, there's this weird feeling like on after hours and on the weekends, I've always had the thought, okay, if this was a foot race, this is when no one else is running, right? So if you want to either catch up to the people that are way ahead of you in the race, now's when you run. And if you're ahead, this is where you widen the gap even more. And it's always been this. So like 9:00 at night, it's almost like it's impossible not to fire up the computer and start working, because it's like everyone else is not racing right now and I can race. But as we know, you don't want to be that 80-year-old that didn't have relationships with your kids. So I think it goes both ways. They're definitely very good things, and it can provide structure and some comfort, but it needs to be balanced.
Have you found yourself, because Ren is 2 years and she took 2.5, yeah. Have you found yourself moving towards what you would say is like a more organic balance and flow with your responsibilities as a father in your career? Or is it something that it's a continuing challenge, like you said, of knowing when to shut off, knowing when to like separate from work? Do you feel yourself moving towards a better balance?
Well, whether it's a good thing or not, full-time single dad right now, right? So in a way, I there was no other alternative. And I think when you're co-parenting in the same household, it's like one can cover down. You can kind of both split duties. Like, hey, I'm going to go on this beach run. You got her for a minute. Or, hey, I'm going to go down to the garage, But when it's just you, by default, like the phone's got to go off. I mean, it's like constant attention. If you look away for a minute, she could be climbing on the table with a black Sharpie drawn on the, you know what I mean? Like, so that's honestly been a really awesome adjustment. And it was almost by necessity. Because when I come home, and from like 5:30 to 7:30, it's just me and her time, and that's it. And I obviously every once in a while a Slack will come in or something, a quick hitter, and you can like respond to it. But for the most part, phone goes down, and it's been a really good adjustment. And then it's like after hours, that's when when she's down, I can get other stuff done. But I'm also trying to balance my own mental health stuff. So it's like, all right, do I fire up the computer and work for 2 hours, or do I go do hot cold tub contrasting and then go to bed at 9:30 after reading like a book? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's you can do either. Obviously one will advance the business. The other one is better for your own mental health. You know what I mean? And physical health too. So
yeah. And there's, I'm sure you could relate to this, is when you're in those moments with your child, obviously they're precious. Not obviously, they are precious, but they're exhausting, and it can leave you feeling kind of like, hey, I haven't had 30 seconds to think a thought about my day or what I want, which there's benefits to that. There's like a self-sacrifice and kind of just grounding that occurs from that. On the flip side though, I do think it leaves two very clear decisions when you do have downtime to yourself, whether the little one goes to sleep or not. It's like, am I going to now do what's best for me? Or am I going to detach to feel like I've been able to relax for a little bit? Now, everybody's relaxing is different, but I'm sure you could relate to like having, okay, kids down for sleep. Should I have 2 glasses of wine and watch a show? Or should I do cold tub, sauna, and go to sleep? Like those, and maybe there's even a balance within there, but I know that pull of like, oh, okay, do I stay dialed and really focus on myself, or do I take some time to relax? Which for some people that may be relaxing, but that can be a slippery slope too, where you validate those decisions then because you are busy all day, and then you get some momentum going, and it's been 30 days, and now all of a sudden your routine is drinking 2 glasses of wine and watching a show, and you're not taking care of yourself. So is that something you felt a pull towards one way or the other?
Yeah, and I think that's what we talked about, the ideal day versus the realistic day. And we're all human, right? So yeah, 100%. If you had a really stressful day here at BP, and then, she's being a little bit squirrely at home, and by the time you get down to the living room, it's like 8:30 and you're smoked. Yes, of course, hey, let's have a couple glasses of wine and watch some Netflix like that. I think that's an okay thing. But you have to realize the second and third order effects of that, if that's consistent, is like, alcohol destroys your sleep. We all know that. It doesn't I think it only takes a couple drinks in your sleep. So now you're behind the game the next day. So now you don't handle stress and adversity the next day because you're compromised. You get less REM, deep sleep, all that, and then now you have a stressful day there. And then what do? Oh, I need a 3rd glass of wine because I'm even more stressed. And I think it could become a slippery slope. But those other things, even though it is relaxing, I still see it as work, doing the cold tub and hot tub at night. To me, that's still a task. I'm not like, oh, I can't wait to go do this. And maybe some people can get there. So I think it's a matter of, trying to be as disciplined as you can, but also like giving yourself some grace. There's a lot of people on social media, particularly from the community I came from, that kind of, I think, pretend like they live this freaking Spartan life. And it's like, I know there's times they're not like that. And it almost pisses me off because I think it gives the perception to the average Joe that like,
you're not enough.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, hey man, like if you got to miss a workout one day, or you don't get up at 5 a.m. and hit a run because it's pouring rain out, like you're fine. You know what I mean? Like it's a little bit, to me, over the top. But you should still strive to live a disciplined life because, by being disciplined, it will unlock other levels of happiness that you wouldn't otherwise achieve.
Yeah, I think a little phrase I tell myself all the time is dialed, not rigid. So be dialed in, like have those disciplines that you follow, but nobody wants to be around a rigid person.
Yeah.
And those people, I don't want to say they suck, but it's like if you can't miss a workout, if you can't eat something that's out of your normal routine, if you can't have a drink every once in a while and let loose with your friends, it's like, what's this all for then? And that's, once again, there's a balance there. It's easy to get caught in the momentum of that too. And like you mentioned, to be having now 3 glasses of wine every night, and you probably are validated in as to why you're doing that, but it's having trickle effects on the rest of your life, which are probably making things harder, resulting in you wanting to drink even more wine. So yeah, dialed, not rigid is something I try to follow, because the discipline needs to be there, but there should always be some flexibility, and grace is a word you use. That's a great word to describe too. Kind of, hey, give yourself some flexibility.
100%. And I think it's like for me, it's the weekend. We got football on now, so it's like, yeah, order wings, drink a few beers. Like on Sundays, a lot of times I order spaghetti from this place down the street. It's insane. It's like this giant thing, and I know that's not like the ideal move. It's like, but okay, what am I gonna lose? Like a little bit of definition in my abs or something? Like, who cares? You know what I mean? It doesn't. So give yourself some grace, and balance it, but still get after it.
Yeah, eat the spaghetti. All right, I'm staying on the personal track. Biggest failures and how you overcame them.
Ooh. I think the biggest swing and miss was from and I mentioned it very briefly in the Born Primitive Origins episode that aired a few episodes before this, but right before Born Primitive, I had a failed business, and we thought we were going to nail it, man. Quick version was, I was in college. We took a class for new product development. Basically, you take the entire semester to basically invent a product. And it started out first day, professor was like, all right, for the next 2 weeks, I want you to identify everything in your life that's an inconvenience. And we were in college at the time. So one of the inconveniences me and my buddies in the group identified was our beer gets warm at our parties because we don't have anywhere to put the keg to keep it cold. So we came up with this giant koozie that wraps the keg and keeps it cold. And we learned how to print on it so it looks like the actual beer can. So it would look like a giant Miller Lite can. It actually looks sick.
Hell yeah.
So we got it patented. We got an investment for $110,000. I flew to Miller Coors' headquarters in Chicago and presented to their board with the products. I had like 6 or 7 prototypes of all their different main brands, and I showed how this is one going to give you branding at events, because you see all these like just silver kegs that have no branding on them. I said, this is a branding opportunity, but also a functionality opportunity. When you go to these events, you wrap them up before they leave. They're cold. They stay cold all day. You're good. Board loved it. The director of that point of sale division, we got beers afterwards. He said, hey, we're all in on this, that we're going to open this up to the catalog. So this is where I made a huge mistake. He basically said, how quickly can you get this moving, right? We want to do a test order of like 3,000 units. And I said, well, right when I get back to Indiana, we'll like rock and roll. We'll order all the raw materials. So I had to wire like $50,000 overseas to order the raw materials. And then I signed a 5-year lease on like $100,000 printer, or maybe $80,000. And then I signed a 3-year lease for a warehouse where we were going to make these things, right? Thinking like we're rolling, like we threw the Hail Mary, first down, opening play of the game, and skinny post. You know what I mean? We got tackled at the 5-yard line, but we're about to punch it in, right? Like that's what we're feeling. And that guy ends up getting fired. The director of point of sale, Pete, got fired. So the one below him called me one day and was like, hey man, bad news. Pete's out. We got a new director. He wants to put all programs on hold. And I don't know what this is going to, you know what I mean? So long story short, we tried to convince this new guy, and he was trying to simplify their product offerings, and it just didn't pan out. That was a huge punch in the nose. And that was really my first big stab at business. I had ran a pretty successful lawn mowing and landscaping business, like growing up through my junior year in college, but that was like the first real business involving someone else's money in this.
Was that the norm for this project, the class project, to get that far? Had there been other people who had actually gotten?
No, not even close. The professor was actually really cool. He had like 500 patents to his name. He had invented like the center shafted putter and all these things. And he basically pulled our group aside after the semester. He gave us A's and was like, hey, I see a lot of like pitches in here, because you do a fake Shark Tank pitch at the very end. They bring in guys that are friends of his that are on, like, you know what I mean? And they try to make it really cool. And he said, hey, you guys should actually pursue this, because, you know, I would know I've got 500 products patented and I've launched all kinds, you know what I mean? He said, you guys should run with this because I think this will hit. So he kind of got us fired up to try it. So as soon as we graduated, we were like, hey, let's see what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
It was a long process. I'm oversimplifying it, but we thought we were in, man. Like, lesson learned there, don't do all this until you get a purchase order. I literally been like, okay, Pete, like, let's drink a beer together, but I need a PO and then I'll submit it, right? And instead I was like, oh yeah, the director's in, and so, yeah, that was a big one. And then, you know, pivoted right into Born Primitive, right off of failure and rolled into that. So.
And was that, did you know it was done as soon as that happened? You didn't pursue any further?
No, we tried to go to Anheuser-Busch, and then we tried to do a direct consumer model. So we made like American flag kegsters and things like that. And it was just such a niche market. So, you know, not many people are getting kegs. So like to try to convince them to spend $70 on a giant koozie for their keg it's a tough sell. You know, it's a fun, like, it's a novelty thing, but it's not a sustainable business. Yeah, man, it was, first and goal on the 5, couldn't punch it in.
Hey, that happens.
Couple holding penalties.
Yeah.
You know, personal foul. We're back at the 50. We got a punt.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It happens.
So, yeah.
How about at Born Primitive? Are there any that stand out to you as far as during this journey that you would consider a failure or just a mistake?
Definitely not failure. I think we've gotten punched in the nose quite a few times. I think that the most recent that comes to mind is honestly just present day. COVID created such an explosion in everyone's businesses that most businesses kind of set up the infrastructure thinking that this is just the new norm. And then there was a big correction back to what should have been the norm. That's why you see a bunch of companies doing major layoffs, because everyone's like, oh, you know, everyone's basically printing money for a couple of years because of the kind of what COVID caused. Hopefully just saying that word didn't just get us off the charts again. So Spotify, please be nice to us. Apple, please be nice to us. I don't mean any harm. Anyway, but, you know, we all, you know, right now for anyone listening, like discretionary spend is way down by the consumer. Everyone's feeling it. You had all these direct consumer brands that went public a few years ago. Their stocks are down like 90%. It's a really hard time to be in business. Fortunately, we have a really loyal following, and because of, I think, you know, what we've stood for and just making quality product, we've been able to ride out that storm way better than most. So thank God we've set up this business up the way we did. But there's a lot of companies that are out there that are really hurting. And I think for us, you know, and you were included in this as well, like our biggest mistake was not reading the tea leaves sooner and making those corrections earlier, and realizing, hey, this was an influx. So let's not put our foot on the gas too hard, because there's going to be a reckoning, right? And we've all kind of gone through that.
Yeah.
But like, I'm as bullish as I've ever been, right? The Savage one just dropped, getting crazy good reviews. We're selling a ton of them. Outdoors ripping, you know, that we launched last year. Tactical's about to launch. You know, like we have, and then this, like we top 1% of podcasts in the first 3 weeks, actually the first week, totally insane. So there's a lot of good things going on, but be the equivalent of like, you know, we're going bass fishing on a lake and the fish just aren't biting as much, man. There's only so much you can do, and you know, you got to wait it out until the fish start biting again. And I think that's where we're at right now. It's middle of the afternoon, sun's high in the sky, the fish are sleepy, they ain't biting right now.
Well, and I think as a company, I think you would agree though that there have been silver linings that have come from this. And what I mean by that is it forced us to grow up and make sure like what you're looking at as senior leadership is steering the ship in the right direction, because things were so good for a while. And some of that was literally our performance, but then the macro environment of e-commerce exploding, COVID created a boom within the online industry, is that decisions were being made, not flippantly, but just very aggressively of like, yeah, things are ripping. And then like you said, all of a sudden that tide starts to shift a little bit. It has forced us to make sure that we have as much data and as much, it's usually on the financial front to make those decisions. And that now sets us up for success in the long term. So it kind of forced something that would have happened naturally, maybe over a 4 or 5 year, just as we grew and we professionalized things, that had to happen in 6 months. And that actually for us, as much as it sucked going through, and it's still something we're we're battling, it professionalized us in a lot of ways, and I think that's going to have huge benefits here moving forward.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, here, okay, we're shifting away from the personal ones, getting a little more to the business side.
All right. I dodge those, hopefully, somewhat.
Will there be any push to go after field sport? And I think by field sport, they just mean like, I would say like football, soccer, baseball.
Sports.
Yeah. Will there be any push to go after field sport athletes? Why or why not?
Definitely, yes. And what's cool, we actually kind of have a few in the works right now. And what's kind of neat as we come up on 10 years is, back in the day, you just have to beg people to rep your brand, right? And the roles reverse. And now we're to the point where people at the top of their craft are actually telling their agents, hey, call Born Primitive. It looks like what they're doing is pretty freaking cool. And I want to align with brand that aligns with how I roll. And that's starting to happen. So I can't get into details yet, but there are some NFL athletes that are super interested, that are the best in the NFL, and have left Nike contracts because they're done with that. And that's really freaking cool. We just recently signed Stipe Miocic, about to fight John Jones on November 11th at Madison Square Garden. It's going to be a super fight. Stipe is the winningest heavyweight of all time and 6-time heavyweight champ. So that was another thing. Stipe is a firefighter. He told his agent, hey, I like Born Primitive's values and what they stand for. So his agent's calling us and saying, hey, what do you think about working with Stipe? So that's really cool. And I'd say, for me, now that we have the ability to kind of have our pick on athletes, to some degree, of course, like, there's athletes that are tied up in existing contracts, but you don't have to beg anymore. So we can be way more selective and pick athletes that we feel align and represent the brand well. Whereas, like, to be honest, in the early days, you just find anyone that has 200,000 Instagram followers and you beg them to rep your brand. Like, you don't even look into it any further than that because you just need exposure. Now it's like, no, this needs to be more thought out, and we need to find people that will exemplify the traits that we want portrayed as a brand, as if the brand was a person, right? And that's really exciting because I think in 2024, if some of these things pan out, like, y'all are going to be, we're going to rock the boat a little bit.
Yeah, there's some big names in there.
Yes. Yeah, I wish I could disclose it, but I don't want to do that to this one guy. He's a freaking savage, and leave it at that.
And even individuals like Jordy Ball, who won 2 college softball World Series at Oklahoma, recently transferred to Nebraska. She's somebody that's on board for all the reasons you just said. For the right reasons, she very much aligns with the brand. So I remember some people like, oh, you guys are in softball. But then once she was on national television at the softball World Series, I can't. We had so many people reaching out, like, so cool that you guys are supporting her. Love to see her part of the brand. So that was a great insight for us too, of like, whoa, this is outside of the CrossFit space, which we've kind of been embedded in since the beginning. But we got an incredible response. She's an incredible athlete, incredible girl. So definitely opened our eyes that there's opportunity out there outside of what we're currently doing.
Absolutely.
How long did it take to design and perfect the shoes?
About 2 years. I know we talked about that in one of the other episodes, but yeah, we found some shoe engineers that have been doing this for a really long time, and kind of gave them our initial intent. I think we went through 4 or 5 iterations, and we were wearing them and making tweaks. But yeah, it's a long process, and just to get the order once you submit it is like another 5 months. I think door to door, it was around the 2-year mark. And as of this episode airing, it's only been out like about a month, and it's been a wild response. So, I think we were a little nervous at first, obviously coming into a brand new vertical, but I think I'm past the phase of being scared now because we're getting so much awesome feedback. Even some of these shoe review guys that like they don't screw around and they do honest reviews, and they're like, damn, okay, like they kind of killed this, and that's been really cool. So, if you're listening and you're in the game for a new pair of shoes, I give the Savage one a shot. I think you'll really like it.
And were the shoes, was that 2 years ago when that started to get ideated, was that a hell yeah moment for you, or was it one that took some thinking through as far as like, is this an arena I want to step into, or was it a for sure?
I mean, I always wanted to do it, but we just didn't have the bandwidth nor the expertise at the time. But for me, I don't want to talk shit about other brands too much, but like Reebok changed the Nano every year, and every other year, in my opinion, one man's opinion, it was a terrible shoe. And I'm like, why did you not just keep the last one? You don't need a new version every year. You know what I mean? Like, So it was super frustrating because you never know what you got. And then the Nike Metcon, like I think the 4 or 5 was the best shoe ever. And every year it got bulkier and bulkier and bulkier. And I think what happened is you had these people sitting in a boardroom that weren't CrossFitters that were like, oh, they do these things called handstand push-ups. So like, let's put this big plastic thing on the heel so they slide up the wall. And oh, they must do rope climbs all the time. So let's do this giant rubber thing on the insole so they can like catch the rope. But then it's like this crazy bulky shit. They were just doing things that I think if had they actually tested with like in the CrossFit community, they would be like, guys, we do rope climbs like maybe once a week, maybe. So don't worry, like don't revolve the shoe around 2 movements at the expense of like, if I have to run an 800, I feel like I have freaking bricks on my feet. So for me, part of it, I as a consumer and someone who really liked those products, I was getting super frustrated of like, are they running this by anyone who actually wears this for the reason it's getting worn, right?
Yeah.
And the Reebok one blew me away because it's like you are in the CrossFit space. You have a stable of athletes. Why do you go from one that's awesome and then the next year it's completely different and everyone says it's terrible? So I part of the, honestly, man, was like, all right, if they're not going to do it right, I'm going to do it myself. And then, you know, I won't throw shade on another brand, but there's another brand in the mix that like I've never even considered it a CrossFit shoe. And it blew me away that people, it literally, it was not a CrossFit shoe. I wore it once and I was like, are you kidding? This is it. So part of it was out of necessity and saying like, all right, we can do that better. Like, let's take a swing at it.
It turned out great. Yeah.
So a little unfiltered there.
No,
yeah.
that's good stuff. All right, this is an interesting one. This is one I know you and I have both had to navigate throughout our time, or my time here, and throughout since you founded the company. Love your clothing brand and women's gear. I just don't like that it's made in China. So, yeah, get into that one. I know I can give my feedback on that one as well, but I'd love to hear your thoughts there. And this is a vulnerable one for us as a company. So, yeah, take that one.
So in transparency, I told Tony to not let me see any of these, but this one was one he was nervous about. So he was like, all right, I got to run one by you so I don't throw you a zinger and that, you know what I mean? That, and honestly, this is a great question. And we easily could have just thrown this one in the trash and moved on and been fine. But I feel like we want to be transparent and authentic in this podcast. So sometimes, you know, let's get some hard questions. So for this, great question. I totally understand the sentiment. That is something in the very, very beginning, before I knew anything about sourcing apparel, that I was like hell bent. It's like, oh, it's going to be made in the USA and, you know, we're pro-America. And of course, like it aligns with the values of the company. Unfortunately, there's a harsh reality you realize when you get into the apparel business that whether you like it or not, overseas, particularly China, they do it way better than we do it here. It's not just a price thing. Everyone says that's, oh, it's just price. It's the capabilities as well. The fabric selection. I mean, just to put it in context, for our outdoor line, we are working with outdoor and tactical to source some of it in the United States and in other countries. We are diversifying outside of China too for a variety of reasons. And we took our men's frontier pant, which is our like hunting pant or outdoor pant. It's a great pant, extremely technical. The guys killed it. And we took it to a company that is a made in the USA hunting brand. And they're friends of ours through a guy that we're working with. And they straight up told us, because we said, hey, what if we used your production facility? Of course, we're competitors, but we can give you a bunch of production business. We want to see it and we shipped them a pair of pants, and they looked at it and said, there is no way we can ever get to this level of sophistication or craftsmanship. The pants we have to make here in the USA are nowhere near the technical capabilities of this product. And we can't get that awesome Gucci fabric that you can, you know what I mean? And thank God they were honest with us. And they even, you can even just look at the stitching and you see, all right, the people that are sewing this we will never have that level of skill. So as hard as it is for me to admit that, like as a guy that's as American as they come, and you know what I mean? That is the reality we deal with. On top of that, the cost is insane in the US. So it's like, guys, if you want to buy a sports bra that we're going to have to charge you $145 for to run a business, and it's half the quality of the ones we're giving you now, is that something you really want? You know, and ironically, like this comment was made from an iPhone made in China, probably, right? So it's like, I think this was not a malicious question, but I think a lot of people beat that drum of like, oh, if it's not made in the USA, I don't buy it. And it's like, oh, coming from the comment from your Chinese iPhone. You know what I mean? So I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy, but we do employ 70 plus people here. We employ like 4 or 5 screen printing shops in town that we give them hundreds of thousands of dollars in business here in Virginia Beach, which is awesome because I know for some of these businesses, we're like 100% of their business, right? So there's a lot of it's printed here. We are looking to get made in the USA for some of our stuff and then diversifying outside of China. And here's the thing, last thing I'll make on China is like the Chinese government and the US government, of course, have like, there's a clearly an adversarial relationship there. I used to have a top secret clearance with the US government, so I know way more than most about what that actually looks like. It's real. However, the people in China don't really have issues with us, right? They're just normal people, right? So it's not really with them, it's with the government. And so you also kind of have to keep that in mind. But it's a great question. I totally get the angle. If I were in your seat, I'd probably be saying the same thing because those people don't know the reality of what it is when you actually have to run the business and source product. And that's why everything you see is sourced over there. It's not a coincidence. There's a real reason behind it. And I wish it wasn't the case. It just is what it is.
Yeah. I always say if I could wave a magic wand and have one thing for the company, it would be that we could get the quality and the price point made in the USA. But as you just described, the nuances of what that actually looks like, it's not simple, it's complex. And I don't want, like what Bear just said should not sound as an excuse. It's like we're working to diversify. There are reasons why we're there, but we don't ever look at that and say like, these people just don't understand. It's like, hey, we get it. And we in an ideal world, we would do it elsewhere, and we're working towards that. So yeah, I think you gave a perfect answer there. All right. What is the new big product coming after the shoes?
I think, we have Tactical launching. So for anyone wondering like what the hell is Born Primitive Tactical, quick rundown. We are going to be making what we call op Cammies for the operator. So it would be the pants and shirts we would wear in that line of work, under our body armor, running around doing those things. So that will be our most our nearest product innovation that I think will be a big deal. Part of that was rooted is when I was doing that job, I felt the stuff we were getting was not functional for the athlete. The fit sucked, the mobility sucked, and I was like, all right, with our capabilities here at Born Primitive, and given the fact that I do this for a living, in the military community, I have kind of a unique advantage to develop op Cammies because I'm the end user. All my buddies are the end users. We have this right, you know what I mean? So that was what inspired Born Primitive Tactical. And we were just out in the desert a couple of weeks ago, shooting a bunch of commercials and content, live bullets, miniguns, suppressed rifles, the whole deal, body armor, and putting this through the test. It was 115 degrees out there, which was brutal, and it performed really well. So if you are, a policeman, or you are an operator in the military, or anyone that would wear, even just someone that likes to go to the range and screw around, like what we have coming out is incredible, and we're really excited about it. But right beyond that would be our Patriot One assault boot, which is under development right now. So to kind of go with that, we want to be able to give men and women a boot they can wear in a military capacity, but also honestly, it'll make a great outdoor and hiking boot too, which is great because like we don't want to necessarily have it only for that. Okay. And it'll be kind of a mid-rise with some good traction, and it's really stable in the ankle stability. So we're really excited about that. You'll be able to fast rope with it. So for those that fast rope, that have burned their outsoles through down to their foot on a high fast rope, we will mitigate for that. So you'll be good there. Your shoe will remain intact, even if you have a really high fast rope that you got to go down with a bunch of weight on your back. So it'll be pretty cool. We're going to call it Patriot One. Figured that was appropriate. We got the Savage One, of course, and then we'll see what other footwear iterations we have in store in the future.
Yeah. Do you see Born Primitive getting into the I guess the most obvious one would be like a running shoe or a casual shoe?
Yes.
Do you see that in the near future, or maybe not near future, but the future in general?
Absolutely. Yep.
Love it.
Yep.
All right. Well, we got one more, and then we're going to do, I compiled some quick hitters that I knew would be less conversational and would just be kind of a quick answer that were submitted. So, all right, last one. How do you come up with your clothing designs? Choose from samples or design yourself?
Well, honestly, we have a team that's kind of their full-time job. But what's cool beyond that is pretty much everybody here at Born Primitive is very active. And it's not to say it's like a prerequisite to work here. Like we really don't care. Just we happen to attract people that are very active and fit and like that lifestyle. So, typically the product development team will kind of come up with the concepts of stuff they're seeing in the market that, we want to make, and they'll ideate off of that. But then when they'll get all the samples, particularly on the female side, and I think on the fellas we do this as well. It's just to less extent because like the girls are just wild about it. But the ladies, they'll get all the samples and they'll kick all the dudes out and they'll come into the conference room, and you'll have 20 or 30 women trying on all these different samples that are coming in, checking the fit, seeing if they like it, seeing if they like the color, and it's almost like a by committee thing, which I think is honestly probably pretty unique to us, because I think like the big brands, they have like a specific team and they pick the color palette, and then it's just like, that's it. You know what I mean? It's really cool to have the women come in here and kind of all work together to kind of, and it makes it so like when those products are launched, we know with a high degree of confidence that it's going to kill, because all the girls have like thrown out the ones they didn't like, and they'll vote, and we'll have surveys and stuff. Even on the Slack channel, we'll do surveys. So that's kind of how we do it. There's really no science behind it. Of course, with upcoming collections way out, we'll develop kind of the color palettes that we want to start with. That's kind of your starting point. And then for the actual functional components of the apparel, a lot of that is by kind of necessity. So if it's a legging and like girls are asking, hey, can you get rid of the front seam, or can you add pockets? Some of that is by feedback from the customers. So thank you guys really very much for those that kind of give us that feedback. We definitely take note of it. And that's kind of how we do it, man. And then with the fellas, like we're a little less formal.
I was going to bring it up.
You
like
usually we're like changing out in the open and like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, throw these pants on. What do you think? You know what I mean? But it's the same idea. There
was a year period before we got Big Frank, who's our men's and at times women's technical designer. So he's the one actually putting together the formal tech packs now and doing the drawings and everything. Bear and I would ideate on a sample. The supplier would make what's closest to the idea we had, and then we would take the sample, be taking photos, and it's not even Photoshop. It's just the little markup editor on your iPhone
with the little yellow arrows.
We'd be circling, remove 2 inches from this section with an arrow pointing to it. That was the extent of our capabilities as product designers.
Or I would approximate it. I'd be like, gosh, Tony, the sleeves are a little tight. Let's tell him to bump it up by 20%. I would just give a percent. Like that's ridiculous. Like that is not specific at all. But hey, man, we made it work. And that's the thing. Like for those that are early on in their journey in business, in the beginning, it's not going to be some sexy, super dialed operation. Like you can definitely get away with improvising and just doing the best you can. But thank God we're past those days, and now we have Big Frank doing professional tech packs and all the girls that vetted and all that. That's the end state you need to get to. But hey, man, we made those yellow arrows in the screenshots.
It worked. It worked. All right. Well, that's through all the kind of bigger questions. Like I said, I wanted to do a quick hitter round. These are the ones that were submitted that have a quick answer. So let's kick it off with any plans. Some of these gave me a good laugh. Any plans to make supplements?
No.
Who would win in a fight, John Wick or John J. Rambo, and why?
I have a feeling that was definitely one of my friends that submitted that. So thank you. I mean, John Wick is badass, obviously with his ability to like weapons manipulation and all the cool handgun shit he does. But I mean, this is a no-brainer. Like John J. Rambo, it's not even close.
I was going to say, you're obligated to say John Rambo.
I haven't seen the John Wicks in a while, but I'm pretty sure he has not ripped the esophagus out of another man with his bare hands. So we'll leave it at that. John J. Rambo, not even close.
Gotcha. Are there plans for BP gym equipment, wraps, sleeves, belts?
No.
I'd say that's more likely, though, than supplements ever being. I can see eventually, even a gym. I think a gym bag and maybe a belt would be something that would be on brand. But
yeah, that could be cool.
I'm derailing the quick hitters and making them conversational. Any plans for concealed carry apparel?
Yeah, we actually have that in the works already. We have like a low vis jean coming out for Born Primitive Tactical, and it'll have magazine pouches in the back and in the front. And a lot of our stuff honestly is absolutely good to go for concealed carry, particularly our jeans right now. If you carry, I'm rocking a Glock 19 all the time with those jeans. It's stretchy, so that it's not too stretchy that the waistband like isn't rigid enough to carry. But yeah, that specifically will be that low vis jean will be for that purpose. And we even have some stuff in development. We're working with some guys from like the Secret Service and some of the agencies to create a sport coat that will allow them to run their communications, their comms, so you can't see it. And that's like a big issue because you got to run the wires and it doesn't have like the holes in the pockets and stuff. So we're going to come up with like a stretchy blazer because it's got to be stretchy because that's everything I make's got to be stretchy, right? For the guys that want to move, that can run comms through it too. So yeah, that's a world we're going to get into. And then on the women's side, while this isn't necessarily concealed carry, a range legging that I think we killed. And when that goes out, I think the women that live in that world are going to absolutely love it. Because obviously how good we are at just regular leggings. When we looked at some of the competitors on the market that are making range leggings, like, we're going to bulldoze them, man. It's not even going to be close.
For sure. And that was that. Next question was, will BP Tactical offer women's apparel? So
yes.
I think,
and the challenge is like the op Cammies, because that is like a very male dominated niche, not niche, but like need. But we've kind of learned the hard way from outdoor, because remember we made the Frontier pant.
Oh, yeah.
And then all the ladies were like, what the hell? Like, why don't we get the Frontier pant? Same thing. So we will make the women's assault pant and the women's op top. And of course, our MO is nailing that fit, man. So ladies, yes, it will be coming. Just give us some time. We had to nail the men's one first, because that's where 95% of our market will be for that particular product. But it is coming, and we hear you.
Last one. When do we get the retro PE collection, black gray class sweats? Which I think by that they meant like the JanSport, like
yes.
I call them like the wrestler sweat that you like tuck the socks into.
Well, we had those for a while, and I think are they talking about the retro logo too? Because
it says retro Caveman.
Yeah, Caveman.
Or retro Caveman.
Speaking of Caveman, hopefully the production team can do it. But right over, Tone, lean to your right. That's the OG. That's the OG T-shirt from 2014 that we now have framed up in the conference room here. So our 10 years coming up next spring. So we might do a limited edition relaunch of that outrageous shirt with the Caveman with a loincloth between his legs snatching a tree. So that's definitely something. We thought we weren't going to do it, but we actually have a lot of people being like, you got to remake that for like a limited time. So if y'all want to do it, we'll do it. I don't know about the retro sweatpants, although I am a customer. I don't know how big that market is. So
we got to put that on like the old, like the 90s kind of heavy cotton, like that shirt with has like the thicker neck
100%
with like that
cotton, just not functional
nice and
at all.
boxy, little flare in the back.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Bear. Well, we're through the questions. I appreciate your vulnerability there in the beginning. I knew coming into this that some of these would kind of not be tough to answer, but put you on the spot a little bit. So I appreciate you being open and honest, and appreciate everyone for submitting the questions. Hopefully you got some clarity on some questions you had. In the future, shoot away with these. I think maybe every one a month or one every other month, we'll try to do a Q&A depending on the response we get. But yeah, I appreciate everyone submitting them, and feel free in the future to continue to do so.
Yeah, and I think this is something we're rolling with the punches. So if this is something that you guys like, we'll do it more. If not as much, we can do less frequently. And if there's categories, guests, here's the thing. In transparency, now that we've seen success in the podcast and we can go to potential guests with the results and the downloads and all that, getting badass guests is going to be way easier. So if there is a certain area you want us to kind of cover down on, I really like Huberman. Like that kind of stuff's really cool, but to me, it's like way too detailed. I want to give like a Cliff Notes Huberman. Like if we're talking about cold tubbing, like it doesn't need to be like a 2-hour episode. Let's get the high notes and get out of there. Because I know, for me, I'm commuting. Like I don't have time to listen to a 2-hour podcast. So if there's topics you all want us to cover, drop us a suggestion. Even if there's people, recommend them. We'll try to hit them up because ultimately this is for you guys, and we want to bring value to all aspects of your life. Some of them will be super niche. Like, sauning, cold tubbing. We might do one on men's and women's hormones, testosterone, things like that are very relatable, hopefully will help people out. So continue with your feedback. Please rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for tuning in. And if you look in the show notes, hopefully we'll be able to put the questions by like the time. So if you want to skip some of the ones that we weren't interested in, you can just skip right down and listen to only what you want to listen to. So hope everyone's doing good. Hope you're watching some football this weekend and enjoying the fall. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, guys.